So today's vlog is going to be a pretty sad one, and one that I didn't think I would have to think about until years and years down the road. Um, I debated not posting this because it is really personal, but at the same time, I really want to be transparent on here, um, and show what it's really like to live as an autistic person, as well as all the things that I go through on a typical day-to-day basis. And this just seemed, it didn't seem right not to share it. But unfortunately, we got news a few weeks ago that Charlotte has cancer, and we don't really know how much time we have left with her. Oh, I'm gonna try really hard not to cry on this one, but no guarantees, because we're both so, we're just devastated. We got Charlotte when she was 7.5 weeks old. I knew I wanted a Boston Terrier puppy from all the research I did on what kind of dog would be best suited for us, and that seemed like a really good breed. When I went to go look at the litter of puppies, I knew I wanted a girl, and there were eight puppies in her litter. 5 of them were girls, and so the owner took all the girls out into the yard so that I could play with them and get to know them, because I think I was the first one to contact them. And all these little puppies were so adorable, but they all, when she put them out there, I set my purse on the ground, and all of them paid me no attention, but ran over to my bag and started making Boston Terrier snuffle noises. And if you're familiar with that breed, because they're short nosed, they make little snorty, like really cute noises. And all of them were doing that inside my bag, looking for who knows what, except for Charlotte. Charlotte was so adorable. She came and I had my legs crossed, and she just jumped in my lap, curled up in a little ball, and fell asleep. And we probably stayed out there for at least half hour, 45 minutes, so that I could ask the owner all these questions about the puppies and like try and find, I had read all these things about finding the right personality and all these like things you should ask or what to look for. And as I'm going through this, I'm realizing that I've already been chosen by a puppy, and she's sitting in my lap. So yeah. So I always like to say that she chose me, and that she knew from the beginning that she was coming to a good home. Oh. Oh man, I did not realize that that would be so hard. But yeah, she chose me, and we've been besties ever since. She has been our ride or die. We've taken her on so many amazing adventures around the state and around the West Coast. We basically don't leave home without her. She is always with us. If there's something that dogs aren't allowed, we just don't go to those things. Like, she's always been part of our lives. She's our child. We don't have children. We don't plan to have children. She is our baby, and just the last few weeks have been so hard. I mean, this whole year has been hard. So everything kind of, she's been so healthy. We've always thought that she would live to like 20 plus years, and that's not like, oh, wishful thinking. Like, she has just been always healthy. She's never had anything wrong. Breathing and like skin allergies, no problem. Like, all the issues that Boston Terriers typically have, she's never experienced those. She's active. She plays like a puppy all the time. She's 13 and a half. So she is older, but she's always in the best shape of her life. And everyone is always so surprised when we say she's 13 because she does not look it. She has a little bit of gray around her face, but she could be 5 or 6. Like, she looks so young and she feels young. But this year in February, she needed dental work, and we took her in, and she ended up having 17 teeth pulled, which, that was hard. She does not do well under anesthesia, and so we had to take a few days off to be with her while she recovered. But before they did any of that work, they noticed she had a heart murmur, so we had to go through all these things to make sure she was healthy enough to have surgery, and then we finally put her on heart murmur medication, because, like, that was the first time we really knew that she had that. But her heart looked good. The doctor said there wasn't any scar tissue, which is a good sign. Like, the heart murmur is pretty severe. It's either a 4 or a 5 out of a 6. But, the vets weren't too worried about that. Pretty normal for older dogs. And then she, this summer, starting in July, started throwing up in the middle of the night, like almost every night. So we took her back to the vet, and they did a couple tests and found that her liver enzymes were elevated. So they put her on a liver supportive diet and some medication to help support the liver. So we thought that was it, and that was scary, especially since she had a heart murmur also. So we're like, okay, she's finally reaching that age where we need to slow down and be a little more, like, careful with her, because we have noticed also this year that her energy level just hasn't been what it's usually at. She sleeps more and didn't want to go on walks as much, but we do know that she's older, so we're like, okay, she's just slowing down. We're just really gonna have to watch these things. But then it wasn't getting better. She kept throwing up in the middle of the night. I lost a ton of sleep because just staying up with her to make sure she doesn't get sick in the house. So I would be up almost every hour or 2 hours every night, letting her back and forth in and out. And my husband did help too, but he sleeps more soundly than I do, so sometimes he wouldn't hear her get up, so I would just have to get up anyways. And she prefers to be near me, so I've been, like, sleeping on the floor with her in the office to keep her comfortable, because that's the room she likes to be in the most. So it's been really hard on all of us. We've all lost sleep. So then once we got the liver and vomiting taken care of, we then noticed that she had this, like, red hot spot under her jaw. And then Oz noticed that her gum was slightly swollen and looked like maybe her tooth was hurting her. So we took her back to the vet. They gave us some antibiotics for 2 weeks. And at the end of 2 weeks, her mouth was even more swollen. And, like, even down here, it was, like, bulging a bit, and the hot spot was still there. So we took her back to the vet, and she told us that with just looking at it, that Charlotte has cancer. And that was really devastating, because we never expected anything like that with her. At most, we thought maybe she had a tooth abscessed and would have to have another tooth removed. Worst case scenario, we never expected it to be cancer. And the way our vet was talking about it was basically we should put her on palliative care, which is like end of life care, get her comfortable, because this is like the beginning of the end. She also didn't really, given Charlotte's age and heart condition, she didn't think that surgery was an option, but she gave us some references for some specialists that we could talk to just to get another opinion, which is what we did. So, 2 weeks ago, so we took her up to Portland to see a specialist, both a specialist for surgery and for cancer. We ran a bunch of tests that took 2 days to complete everything. They did a CT scan to see how far the cancer had spread and if it was like in her lymph nodes and abdomen and stuff. After all of that, we discussed with our vet specialist all of the different options, whether they could do surgery on her jaw to remove it, which they would also have to remove this part of her lower jaw. But unfortunately, the cancer had already spread to her lymph nodes. So on top of that, they would also have to take out her lymph nodes, all of them, which would put a lot of stress on her body, but also it could cause swelling. And Boston Terriers have a pretty their soft palate in the back, which causes their snoring and like their snuffling noises, makes it hard for them to breathe. So if this swelled, it could also cause issues. So at the end of it, all these things were just piling up that surgery did not sound like a good idea. It just sounded like we would be putting her through more pain, and since the cancer has spread, it would probably have already spread to her other areas. So even if we were successful getting it out of, her jaw and lymph nodes, we may have only bought her like a month if it popped up somewhere else in her lungs or liver or anywhere else in her body. So we made the hard decision to decide that it wasn't worth it. And we talked to the oncologist to discuss other options besides surgery, including radiation and chemotherapy. But even those options weren't great. I think chemotherapy and radiation only had a 10% chance on their own without working, because they really recommended surgery to remove the localization of the tumor, which we decided not to do because it would cause her more harm. And we think these other things would cause her more harm because you would have to sedate her. And like I mentioned, she does not do well under sedation. She even had a panic attack when they were trying to sedate her to do the CT scan, which really worried the doctor that if we were to go through a surgery that there could be complications there. And when they did the pathology report, because it had spread to the lymph nodes, they really thought it was going to be melanoma cancer, which is the most common form of cancer that they find in orally in dogs. But it was actually a squamous carcinoma, which is the second most common cancer they find orally in dogs. And that one, it's unusual that they metastasize and move to other parts of the body, but in this case they're pretty sure it has, because one of her lymph nodes was like super swollen. They couldn't test it because it was like really far back in her throat, and to like agitate it with a needle, it's too close to the esophagus and a couple arteries, and they were really afraid they would miss and so they didn't actually test it, but from the CT scan they were pretty sure that it has spread to her lymph node. So unfortunately, after all of that, we decided palliative care is the best option for her. If there were other options, we would look into it that don't cause her more harm. But even with all these things, the oncologist said that if we didn't do any sort of treatment, we might have up to 3 months with her. And with treatment, it was only going to buy us maybe another month or two. And we just both thought that her quality of life would suffer if we did any of these options. So for now, we have just decided to make her comfortable for as long as we can and just spend as much quality time with her as possible. We met with a specialist less than 2 weeks ago, and it feels like a lifetime ago since we did that. Lots of ups and downs, lots of getting hopeful and then having it come crashing down, lots of denial that we can't believe this is happening right now. We're going through all the emotions. But we just met with her vet today. We saw her last week as well, her local vet. And Charlotte's right now really comfortable. We got her on some really good pain medication to keep her in minimal discomfort. Like, she's still enjoying everything in her life that she normally does. Like, her quality of life is still there at this point in time. She is enjoying her walks. We take her out 3 or 4 times a day. She loves to eat, which is a really good sign. She still gets excited to meet people. She's herself. Like, if you didn't know that she had cancer, you would think that she's perfectly fine. Even when my mom and Nana were here, they were like, she looks really good. But yeah, we know that this pain relief, this feeling good, is only temporary, and is a short-term fix. The vet told us again today that things could change very quickly, and she gave us a list of things to watch out for. She even gave us like this score sheet of different categories that we should mark and like do pretty frequently to see if her quality of life is headed in the wrong direction, and call them when we think it's time. But we're just taking it day by day. Some days are obviously harder than others, but we're doing everything we can to keep her comfortable. We are feeding her all her favorite foods and taking her to her favorite places. I've made a bed on the floor so that I can sleep next to her, because she prefers to sleep on the floor these days. And I'm gonna buy her a electric blanket so she has a nice warm spot to sleep. Now that it's getting colder, we are gonna try and cram in as many fall and holiday activities while she's still around, so that we know that we made the best of the last part of her life. But yeah, it's been really difficult. And on top of all this, we actually had to say goodbye to our rabbit Franklin earlier in May. And that also took us by surprise, even though he was 11 and pretty old, but again, in really good health, until for him it was the last day of his life that he didn't feel good. But yeah, he one day just kind of sat in a couple corners that he normally doesn't, and he was sitting on Charlotte's bed, which he doesn't usually like hang out with her, and I knew something was wrong. And yeah, we had to say goodbye to him within 24 hours of that happening, which was really sad because we were not expecting that. And when I got him, I had done the math of both of his and Charlotte's ages, and there was a chance that we could have to say goodbye to them in a very short time frame, just based on their ages and how fast each one of them aged. But I didn't really think that was something we would actually have to worry about. I knew it was a possibility, but it seemed like a small possibility. But I guess that's the way it's trending right now. But yeah, I know we've given her the best life possible. She has led an incredible life. We're just not ready to say goodbye. And for me, my biggest regret is that For years, I have been saying to her and to myself that just a little bit longer and I will have a work from home job so that we can hang out every day together, and I won't have to say goodbye to you in the mornings, because it's really hard for me to leave her. Um, I just, I, she's like my best friend, and I know that like we're her world, she's our world, so it's really hard to leave her and go to work most days, even before she was sick. And I'm really sad that I wasn't able to make that happen before we have to say goodbye to her. I really wanted to spend several years with her every day at home, just working intentionally, slowly, having afternoon walks together on our lunch break, and just making the most of the end of her life. But even with that regret, I know that we're doing everything we can. Right now, fortunately, both of our schedules allow for her to be with one of us. Like, she's never alone during the day. One of us can always be here with her. So I've adjusted my hours a little bit so that I can be here until my husband leaves for work, and then he's with her until I get home in the afternoons. So that way, in case something happens, she won't be by herself. But yeah, that is the main reason I've been taking a break from this channel right now. We've both just been feeling a lot of emotions, and it's been like the only thing on our mind, and it's been really difficult. But I wanted you guys to know what's happening because, yeah, I want to have an honest channel. I want to show both the great parts of our life and the not so great parts, and right now we're in a not so great part, but I know we'll get through it. I have no idea what our lives are going to look like without her in it. That's something I didn't think I'd have to think about for years, but here we are, I guess. But yeah, right now she's doing really great, and we're just going to keep her that way as long as possible until it's time to say goodbye. So yeah, thank you for watching. I know this was a really sad video, but thank you for being here. And yeah, if you have fur babies at home, give them a big hug, let them know how much they mean to you, and just live every day as if it's their last, because you never know when that'll happen. But yeah, take care, everyone.